Tonight, the battle for Iowa. On the eve of the caucuses, Romney's in the lead, but Santorum's moving up. You're running on a shoestring.
Well, we're shoestrings. That's an insult to shoestring.
Lee Cowan reports police have made arrests in the arsons that have terrorized Los Angeles. Ben Tracy on the manhunt on Mount Rainier after the shooting death of a national park ranger. And Barry Peterson on the real estate boom. Yes, there is one down on the farm.
Black gold is what you're holding in your hand. It's not oil, it's dirt. And it's worth more than ever before.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley, reporting tonight from Des Moines, Iowa.
Good evening from the starting line of the race for the Republican presidential nomination. We're in the library under the dome of the state capitol building in Des Moines. That dome soars 275 feet above ground and is covered with 23-karat gold. But more precious than gold to the Republican presidential candidates tonight are votes. And one day before the caucuses, they were trying to win over the nearly half of voters who say they haven't settled on a candidate yet. The latest polling shows Mitt Romney in the lead with 24%, followed by Ron Paul at 22%, Rick Santorum 15%, and Newt Gingrich at 12%. Santorum is on the rise. In the past month, his numbers have more than doubled, while one-time frontrunner Gingrich has seen more than half of his support evaporate. We asked Santorum today if Iowa is make or break for him.
Well, we have to do well here. I don't think there's any question here. We have to do well. I've said from the beginning that there are really three primaries now, and Ron Paul has his own primary, and Gingrich and Romney are sort of fighting and for the establishment primary, and then you got Perry and Bachman and myself who are sort of trying to be the conservative alternative.
Even if you do well here, even if you win or come in second, do you have the legs to go the second round, the third round, the fourth round? You're running on a shoestring.
Well, we're running on. No, we're shoestrings. That's an insult to shoestrings. We've done it the old-fashioned way, and it's had quite an appeal. Being someone who's not afraid to answer the questions, not afraid to make themselves available to the people in front of the cameras, and be able to handle those questions. We've been able to raise more money here in the last over the holiday weekend. Been able to raise more money than we raised in the previous couple of months, and that's an encouragement to us, and we can start building out our team a little bit as we look to the other states.
But before he looks to other states, there is controversy for Santorum in Iowa. It came after a question yesterday in Sioux City. Santorum started talking about welfare and brought race into his answer.
I don't want to make people's lives better by giving them somebody else's money. I want to give them the opportunity to go out and earn the money and provide for themselves and their families.
You said that you don't want to make black people's lives better by giving them somebody else's money. Why did you say that?
I've seen that quote. I haven't seen the context in what that was made. Yesterday I talked, for example, about a movie called Waiting for Superman, which was about black children. And so I don't know whether it was in response, and I was talking about that. So let me just say, no matter what, I want to make every lives better. I don't want anybody. And I think if you look at what I've been saying, I've been pretty clear about my concern for dependency in this country and concern for people not being more dependent on government, whatever their race or ethnicity is.
We were curious, so we asked our research department to check on welfare in Iowa. They found out that the people on food stamps here, 9% are black, 84% are white. Of all the economic issues voters care about, 60% of Iowa Republicans say the federal debt worries them the most. 3 of our correspondents are covering the issues and what the candidates propose to do as president. We'll start tonight with Jan Crawford, who talked to Mitt Romney about his plan to trim the budget. Jan?
Scott, Romney has stressed that his success as a businessman, he ran the investment firm Bain Capital, make him most qualified to turn around the economy, cut the deficits, and bring down that massive federal debt.
I'm going to go through the federal budget line by line, item by item. I will fight to remove those things I don't think are absolutely essential.
Do you see similarities in what you did at Bain Capital in turning around companies that you would be able to bring into the White House?
You know, in the private sector, in small business and big business, if you don't balance your budget, you go out of business. We can't continue in good conscience to borrow massively more and spend massively more than we take in. And so what I will do is I will, one, cut programs, including some programs I like. But my test is this program so critical for America that it's worth borrowing money from China to pay for it?
Romney proposes to cut $500 billion from the budget in his first term by repealing President Obama's health care law, turning Medicaid, the government health care program for the poor, over to the states, reducing the size of the federal workforce by 10%, and cutting federal subsidies to programs like Amtrak that he calls non-essential.
And I'm going to end programs, not just cut them, not just reduce the rate of growth, but eliminate them.
Now, unlike his competitors, Romney would not cut defense spending, and he hasn't said whether or not he would kill entire federal agencies. But Scott, he told me he'll consider it.
Thank you, Jan. And that is a big difference between Romney and Ron Paul, who is polling a close second here. Wyatt Andrews has the Texas congressman's plans to shrink the federal government. Wyatt?
Scott, Ron Paul's plan to reduce the federal deficit is the largest of all the candidates, and his spending cuts would happen fast. $900 billion during his first year in office. Reducing the federal deficit is the signature issue for Ron Paul in Iowa. His plan calls for reducing the federal workforce by 10%, slashing the pay of Congress, and eliminating the federal departments of education, energy, housing, commerce, and interior.
What we're talking about are real cuts in the shrinking of the size of the federal government.
The largest cut he proposes would end all spending on U.S. troops overseas, starting with Iraq and Afghanistan, then possibly Japan and Korea. Foreign aid spending would go to zero, including the $3 billion in aid to Israel.
We don't need foreign aid. We need more help here at home.
But cutting off aid to Israel and reducing America's global reach would get very little support in Congress. So we asked Paul about that in Des Moines. How do you pass a plan this big, even through a Republican Congress?
Well, obviously you have to bring a coalition together, but you have to change people's minds too. And this is what is happening today. Like 4 years ago, there wasn't near the support for coming home from overseas. Today it is.
Ron Paul's plan may be a long shot, but Scott, here in Iowa, the deficit is very, very important, and voters will turn out for him, it makes him a serious contender to firmly promise cutting the deficit so quickly.
Wyatt, thanks. Another serious contender with promises of serious cuts to the budget is Newt Gingrich. Dean Reynolds is with the former Speaker of the House. Dean?
Scott, Newt Gingrich would cut the deficit primarily by unleashing and modernizing the U.S. economy. Mr. Speaker, what's your plan to reduce the federal deficit?
To first create dramatic economic growth to put people back to work, because that's the biggest single step towards balancing the budget.
Gingrich would also press for a balanced budget amendment, expand energy production, return some financial power to the states, giving governors more control over Medicaid, for example, modernize and shrink government, doing away with the Energy Department, reforming the EPA, and privatizing much of the Housing Department's holdings. Absolutely no tax increases?
None. The problem in the United States is not that we're overtaxed, it's that we're overspent.
What about the theory that says austerity in a time of a sputtering economy is the wrong way to go?
I agree with that. My goal is to create massive economic growth. You can't sustain austerity in a free society. People fire you. They won't take the pain. They're not going to voluntarily let elected officials cause pain. It's going to be a great week.
The economic growth and prosperity he envisions would, he says, remove any pain from spending cuts. But critics are doubtful about that, Scott. They say that fewer regulations could spur some productivity, but they also say that to really reduce the deficit, you would have to include some combination of spending cuts and tax increases.
Dean, thanks very much. As we mentioned, Gingrich was once the front runner here, but he's now polling fourth. Gingrich said today that he doesn't think he's going to win tomorrow. He blamed the damage done by what he calls the volume of negativity. Supporters of the Romney and Paul campaigns in particular have been running a lot of negative TV ads. Stay with CBS News tomorrow for the latest on the Iowa caucuses. We'll have full coverage right here on the CBS Evening News and updates throughout the evening. In Los Angeles, there is a major break in the case of 50 arsons over 4 nights. Dozens of families were burned out of their homes, though no one was seriously hurt. Lee Cowan tells us that the police arrested a suspect today.
He's the man investigators believe may be a serial arsonist, responsible for the worst string of intentionally set fires since the LA riots. He's believed to be the same man captured on surveillance video, leaving one of the crime scenes over the weekend. Police say inside the suspect's van were materials consistent with those used to start many of the fires. But the investigation is far from over.
We're not resting and we're not stopping. We're going to continue on all day and through the night.
The rash of attacks started Thursday. The arsonist's target? Parked cars, most of them under apartment buildings, where in many cases the flames spread. Eric Jones woke up in a panic.
I smelled smoke. I'm like, holy Moses, my place is on fire.
Last night, 11 fires were reported in just 2 hours, bringing the total to 53 over the last 4 days, causing an estimated $2 million in damage.
The car used to be black.
Residents like Natalie Bart had been looking out her window every night, hoping the worst was over. It wasn't.
I was like, I knew this would happen. You know, I'd heard about all the arson attacks. I'm like, oh great, now it's happening to me.
Retired fire investigator Robert Rowe can't believe the sheer number.
Have you ever seen anything like this on this scale?
Not on this scale. I mean, in my entire career, I haven't seen this many fires in a very short period of time.
And the potential for it to be fatal was huge.
It's a tremendous risk for the people that live in these buildings, and it's just a horrible thing for someone to do.
Now, Scott, once these cars catch fire, they're essentially a blowtorch between the rubber, the plastic, not to mention the gasoline. And take a look at just how close they were to the rest of the apartments above. That's what firefighters say is really remarkable about all this, given that there were more than 50 fires over the course of 4 days during this crime spree. Not a single person was hurt, and all those people certainly are hoping that it's the end of it for good tonight. Scott.
Not to mention the danger to the firefighters. Lee, thank you very much. The hunt for a suspected killer comes to an end on Mount Rainier. The winter's first whopper of a snowstorm hits the Great Lakes. And we revisit an Iowa town hit hard by the Great Recession when the CBS Evening News continues from Des Moines. Back now from the Iowa State Capitol. Iowa is doing a little bit better than the rest of the country in terms of unemployment. A boom in farming is one reason, but the economy is still a top concern. Rick Santorum campaigned in Newton today and got an earful about the economy. Newton is a town that we know well. We were there for 60 minutes before the congressional election 2 years ago.
In 2010, we found Newton, population 15,000, much like the rest of the country, suffering with a flat recovery.
You know, the economists say that the recession's over.
Really? You should come to Newton, Iowa.
That was Dave McNear on 60 Minutes 2 years ago. He owns a small advertising company, and we met him again this morning.
Look around Newton, Iowa, and tell me how things have changed.
They're pretty much the same. You know, I mean, people are working harder. People are, you know, pushing, shoving, dragging, pulling to do whatever you can do. The tough thing is, and this happened to me just the other day, I pull into a gas station. Here's a guy that I went to school with working behind the counter of a gas station. I leave the gas station. Here's another guy that I went to school with driving a cab.
People are doing what they have to do to support their families.
Absolutely.
Why haven't things improved in the last 2 years?
I got to believe there's a lot of uncertainty out there. I don't believe that people feel, you know, we see it in our business a lot. Have a couple of good months, or my customers will have a couple of good months, and then everything kind of loses steam again.
Newton lost steam in 2007 when Maytag closed its factory that employed 5,000. Now, this is the Chrysler dealer, the Chevy dealer, the Tractor Supply. Chaz Allen is the part-time mayor.
When we were with you 2 years ago, it was a midterm election. The country sent a new Congress to Washington. What difference has that made to Newton?
I don't know that we've seen a big difference. We see gridlock.
And the mayor told us gridlock kills jobs. For example, the new plant that makes wind turbine blades can't plan ahead unless Congress makes decisions about energy tax credits.
So your message to Washington is what?
Compromise. Move forward. Policies that are longer than 2 months and a year, we need to move forward.
Like a lot of people we've been talking to in Iowa, Mayor Allen and Dave McNear told us that even now they haven't decided who they're going to vote for. Winter weather often affects Iowa voter turnout, but we are expecting sunshine tomorrow with a high around 40 degrees here in Des Moines. It's another story in the Great Lakes, though, where a blast of Arctic air is delivering heavy snow. As much as 2 feet of snow is forecast from upper Michigan to New York State by tomorrow, with lesser amounts as far south as West Virginia. On Mount Rainier, the hunt for a suspected killer comes to a sudden end. When we come back. The hunt for a suspected killer in Washington state ended today on the slopes of Mount Rainier National Park. Searchers found his body in the snow. He was wanted in the shooting death of a park ranger, and Ben Tracy is there.
SWAT teams tracked 24-year-old Benjamin Colton Barnes for 2 days across snow-covered terrain. This morning, a helicopter spotted a body.
A body has been spotted from the air in a drainage above Narada Falls.
Authorities believe Benjamin Colton Barnes died due to exposure to the elements.
The condition he was in and the clothing he had on him, he was not equipped to make it a night or two in the winter conditions that were up there.
The manhunt began on New Year's Day when the Iraq War veteran ran a roadblock at Mount Rainier National Park. He allegedly shot and killed Ranger Margaret Anderson, a mother of 2, when she tried to stop him. Barnes was last seen running into the woods carrying a semi-automatic rifle. Dozens of other park visitors were quickly evacuated.
A ranger came down that had gunshot holes in their window and said, "We need to get out of the area. There is somebody that is shooting."
Police have linked Barnes to a shooting at a Seattle area house party early Saturday that wounded 4 people. The veteran is described by friends and family as a survivalist who suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. He was also involved in an ongoing custody battle.
Just a few moments ago, the authorities here told us that when they found Barnes, he was face down in a creek and he was just wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and 1 shoe. That's why they believe he likely died from hypothermia. The park here at Mount Rainier has been closed today, and Scott, they tell us it will be closed again tomorrow.
Ben, thank you very much. Hundreds of thousands turned out today for the Tournament of Roses parade in Pasadena, California. They saw the usual flower-laden floats and crisp marching bands, but then came a very different parade. Occupy Wall Street protesters, pounding drums, waving signs and banners, and chanting against corporate greed. American farmland. Why the price is as high as an elephant's eye. Next. We've done a lot of reporting on the struggling real estate market. Since the bubble burst, home values are down 32%. But here's something we bet most folks don't know. Farm real estate is soaring. Between 2007 and 2010, it jumped 17%. We asked Barry Peterson to tell us about the land boom right here in Iowa.
Welcome to Dow's, Iowa. Population not quite 550. On a recent chilly morning, it seemed half the town was packed into the local community center. The occasion was a land auction. Presiding, a man who calls himself the dirt dealer.
When farmers make money, they buy one of 2 things usually, iron or dirt. I sell both.
For 30 years, Jeff Obrecht has been in the farm equipment and land business, and business is booming.
There's been no better time in our history to sell a farm than today.
While real estate values continue to fall in much of America, values for farmland soared here 32% in 2011, the biggest gain ever. The upsurge is driven, the dirt dealer told us, by the perfect storm of low interest rates and the high price of corn, thanks to strong exports and the increasing need for corn to make ethanol. The more productive the soil, the more it's worth. And at an average price of $6,700 an acre, it's worth a lot.
This stuff is like black gold.
Black gold is what you're holding in your hand. It's not oil, it's dirt.
And you can get rich off of it.
And you can get rich off of it, that's correct, if you want to sell it.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Well, if you own some, it sounds better.
About 10,000. The Olson family owned the 148 acres that was up for auction. They originally bought the farm for just over $13,000 in 1936. Today, they were hoping it would sell for well over $1 million. Jeff Obrecht knew of 3 serious bidders.
So the race is on. Real simple.
Bidding was competitive, and the price quickly went north of $10,000 an acre.
Sold the farm, $10,600.
The total sales price was more than $1.5 million. Despite the chances at these riches, most farmers buy land for life and don't like to sell. State laws help keep speculators out of the market, and there are only so many acres of black gold in Iowa. One more reason sky-high prices probably won't see a sunset anytime soon. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Dow's, Iowa.
And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. We'll be here in Des Moines again tomorrow as Iowa voters go to the caucuses. For all of us at CBS News all around the world, good night.